We got all these stage conveyors going up to the stockpile. What we want you to observe, this will be conveyor 1. See how it's loaded, check out the condition of the belt, any other observations that you might come with. I'll be here for any questions that you might want to ask. Some people here have more experience than others. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves about it. What I want you to do is generate dialogue on what's actually going on as opposed to what you would just suppose is going on. Okay? There'll be some unique findings here, even though we're dealing with relatively light-duty aggregate belting here. We got a homemade belt cleaner. Every time it comes in contact with the mechanical splice joint, it jumps. So now we got Renegade carryback located over top of the screen of the tail pulley of the receiving conveyor. Obviously, the blade material that they were using on the V-plow has long since deteriorated, and there's no contact with the belt.
Not so much plow anymore.
No plow. You can't really get high enough to see how the skirting's functioning, but you can sure see a mistracking issue going on this belt. It seems to be consistent. There's no contact with the second support idler at the transition. So this belt has some issues, but obviously it's staying in production. It's not creating enough bad issues where they want to shut it down and rework it. You know, it does have some sag on the return idlers, but on the other hand, it's still moving, it's still carrying product, so to tension it up further might create some additional difficulties. We see that it's tracking off to this side toward us, all the way around the system. If you were to tighten this up, that tracking would probably get more severe.
Okay.
We're at conveyor number 2. We've got a homemade cleaner on here that's nothing more than a urethane blade with a catenary weight. That means that the weight is allowing to put pressure on the blade onto the belt, but fluctuations in the belt will allow the cleaner to bounce. And as it does that, Renegade material is allowed to escape by the cleaner blade, creating these piles of material located underneath the conveyor structure. All these are types of things that you know are going to accelerate belt wear. It's going to decrease efficiency. A lot of times they let these things go. They know they're going to shut down in the next few days for the season, so they'll probably rework this stuff over the winter months.
Ride it out.
Let's go on to the next conveyor. I'm holding the tape here as a reference of what a true straight line should be, and that's the way the belt should be traveling. You can see the curvature of the belt on the return side, showing the evidence that the belt is cupping. There's further evidence of this on the top side idlers. Even though the belt is running the full width of the idler, the observation was made that the wear patterns on the idler indicates that this part of the belt is not making contact with it. Another evidence of the belt being cupped. The participants have immediately saw a flaw with number 4 conveyor here, where we have a training device designed to keep the belt centered on the structure that's actually failed. The training idler itself has collapsed, fatigued out, and now is creating drag on the belt, causing damage to both the structure of the training device and obviously the structure of the conveyor belt. So this is a very undesirable circumstance. It should require immediate attention before the belt gets torn up. What we got going on here is a classic example of where conveyor 4 is loading to conveyor 5. This thing is offloading so badly, I'm getting splashed by wet sand. The skirting material at the bin, or the loading area of conveyor 5, is not even making contact with the belt. Because the receiving conveyor is angled off, probably about, I don't know, 20 degrees off center from the staging area, the belt's getting pushed overweight to the left. Consequently, the whole run of this belt is severely mistracking off to the left. Conveyor 4 does have a factory cleaner on it, so it's actually a designed product as opposed to the homemade cleaners we saw on previous conveyors. So you see a lot less of the anthill circumstance behind this particular conveyor. All the things that were going wrong with this one, at least they're keeping the belt cleaner. But conveyor 5 is having some real issues with tracking off to the side due to side loading. This is problematic for efficiency of conveyor performance. Even something as simple as putting the hood on the tail pulley will direct the material to drop down straight. We're at the staging area of conveyor 5 to conveyor 6. Observation quickly made that Renegade material is getting underneath the belt. Most likely this belt got in a situation where it was no longer sealed and material became entrapped inside the conveyor itself, as evidenced by this pile of product located in here. It's built up enough to the point where it's going to start deteriorating the bottom side of this conveyor belt. Again, not an ideal situation. No doubt it'll be looked at after shutdown so that they can figure out why this occurred and prevent it from occurring again. This conveyor structure has a lot of house cleaning issues going on. The class noticed that there's a hole in the mechanical splice that's allowing product to sift down through. The contamination is evident not only on the topside idlers, but on the return idlers as well. It's rampant. Very difficult to be able to keep this belt operating efficiently with all the Renegade material that's just surrounding all the moving parts of this conveyor. It's definitely going to need some attention in order to fix it up. Now we're looking at conveyor number 7. Number 6 is feeding the conveyor at 90 degrees to the travel of the product. What this is doing is pushing the belt on this incline radial stacker off to the left all the way around the system. And it's primarily caused by the staging area where it's loaded with the material being off center, loading the belt off to the left. So consequently, it's a consistent mistracking issue. You could try to retrain this belt, but until you get the product centered properly, you're going to be fighting the product all the way through the cycle of the belt. Again, not an ideal circumstance. This belt does seem to be cleaner, and it's in reasonably good shape because we don't see much evidence of cupping on the return side. Rich Gilman is a conveyor specialist that's working with NIBA today. We have a staged conveyor here, 70-foot stacker, is that right, Rich?
That's correct.
And we have power generated to it. It is obviously going to be running empty in this building, but the purpose of this exercise is going to, first of all, preview the structure to see if there's any indications of having tracking issues in the past. And then we're going to apply mechanical tracking devices to the belt to see how that may affect performance when the belt is empty. Understanding that if you can track a belt while it's empty, you can keep it trained while it's running, while it's full. Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, let's talk about tracking in general. Just to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about with tracking, what is the most important spot on this conveyor to track correctly? What do you think? Give me some ideas. Go ahead.
So it's coming around the tail? You want to
Around the tail pulley. Everybody agree with that? Sound good? Okay. Anywhere else?
head pulley?
Where?
Around the head?
Around the head pulley. At my discharge area. Great point. What else?
Load zone?
Load zone. Perfect. Kind of goes in with the tail pulley, but a little bit more direct on what we're talking about. The return side. Okay. If you look at this particular conveyor as an example, my roller brackets that support my return rollers are set very wide. Okay? So if this belt mistracks on the return side, what am I going to hit before I hit that bracket? All of those little tiny zigzag frame supports. Now, this conveyor does have a mechanical fastener in it, so if that mechanical fastener starts bouncing off of that structure, the edge of my belt starts bouncing off of that structure, I could come into some major problems. Okay. So, load zone's important, yes. Anywhere on this conveyor, in reality, is important. What's going to tell me it's important? When I first walk this conveyor and see where it is mistracking. Anybody have a clue how they'd adjust this if it was real world? Right there, usually. Yep, they'd grab a nice hammer, and they just walk up to the conveyor and start whacking on idlers. Oh, we want to go that way, or oh, we want to go that way. That's the most common way. A lot of times you walk up to a conveyor that's got a tracking issue, and the first thing you look at is you see the trainer, the idlers just all over the place. So a lot of times you spend your first part of the time. We were just down at a plant in Texas. We probably spent the first 2 hours just getting the rollers back straight, because there was just no way to know where you were because they were all jacked out of place. We spent another half hour with their Bobcat actually moving the legs to get the conveyor halfway straight because it was so out of whack. So now that's one of the things where, do you need a trainer or do you need to fix the situation? There we fix the situation. What we have here is you've actually wore into your plow blade, and which will allow the belt to only go so far. So the belt is actually contained now within that, so it can't, which in this case it's not a bad deal. We don't want it to come farther this way, but if this happens and then the belt does change, you have possibility to do edge damage or damage to the equipment that it's actually on there. So with an area like this, what we'd want to do is cut this off and get it to a smooth area again. Go off of your actual fixed structure up front and measure to the center of your tail pulley. And what that tells you is your square with the tail of the structure, which is what your conveyor runs off of. It's possible this could actually be installed off center. So this way we're verifying that the tail pulley is actually squared with the structure versus with its own base.
They had the foresight to actually check the screw tension on this to realize that the tail pulley wasn't square. So all the other effort that would have to be put forth in order to get this belt to track properly would be for naught if you don't know it's tail pulley square. So actually that's really the first place you want to look. Okay? Especially when you have screw take-up. Anything to add to that, Rich?
That's what Dick said.
At any rate, at that point, run the conveyor, see if that took any of the training issues out, and if necessary then do the other procedures like bumping return idlers, or if necessary put a mechanical training device in so that you can get the belt to run true. It truly is fabulous that you guys would interact as much as you did, that you participated in this course content as much as you did. It's an effort by NYBA to try to familiarize all of their member employees at their choice with as much knowledge as we can muster in the period of time that we had to work with in order to facilitate the belting industry in general, any way that we can do it. And belt performance values is certainly one of them, and that's what we wanted to cover today. So I think both of us would like to thank you for your participation. And appreciate you being here. If you have any questions, we'll be around for a little bit. Thanks once again. Travel safe home.